So, sir, first of all, President Trump said there'll be no more punishment for Saudi Arabia over the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. The Saudi government must be very happy to hear that.
Well, we've always said that the Saudi government is not involved in this. This was a rogue operation. These individuals were officials of the government who exceeded their authority and committed a crime. We have said that we will investigate, which we have. The public prosecutor brought charges against individuals, including the death penalty against 5. We have said that we will put in place mechanisms to ensure that this doesn't happen again. This is how normal countries deal with a situation like this. This is a terrible mistake, and we want to make sure it doesn't happen again, and we want to make sure that those responsible are held accountable.
I mean, what lessons have been learned by the Saudi government?
We are in the middle of a review of our procedures and policies with regards to intelligence operations, make sure that people understand their responsibilities and their and what they can and cannot do very clearly, and make sure that the lines of authority are clear so that we don't have a mistake like this.
I mean, that's a pretty extraordinary breach of authority, murdering somebody inside a Saudi consulate.
Absolutely, yes. And we take it very seriously, and we're very concerned about it. But unfortunately, mistakes like this happen with other governments.
Very importantly, President Trump did not clear the Crown Prince's name. In fact, he said that the Prince might have had knowledge of the killing. In President Trump's words, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Does that matter to the Saudi government?
We have made it very clear that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince is not involved in this at all. We have made it very clear that the senior officials who were involved in this, who could have been involved in this, were dismissed from their roles. We have detained the individuals who conducted this operation. And as I mentioned, we have the public prosecutor has filed charges against 11, 5 of whom he's asking for the death penalty.
I mean, you've said that the Crown Prince has been exonerated. Has the Crown Prince been investigated?
We looked at how this issue came about, and how the operation was launched, and the people who were in part of the operation, and what they did. And it has nothing to do with the Crown Prince.
Can he be investigated, or is he technically above the law in Saudi Arabia?
In Saudi Arabia, nobody is above the law, but we have an investigation. We have information that we've received from our Turkish friends. Unfortunately, we receive it after it's been leaked to the media. We have said that if they have more information to provide, that we would look forward to receiving that information. Our public prosecutor launched his own investigation in the kingdom. He came to certain conclusions, and based on that, he took action.
Have Saudi officials listened to the audio recording that Turkey says it has of Jamal Khashoggi being killed?
I believe one of our officials has, in the law enforcement or intelligence area, and we have asked the Turks to provide us with a copy of it so we can do voice recognition and we can do forensics, so we can establish for certainty who the voices on the tape are, but we haven't yet to receive a copy.
I mean, US officials have told journalists that the CIA assessment is that the Crown Prince gave the order to kill Jamal Khashoggi. One of the officials who was fired and then sanctioned by the US was an advisor to the Crown Prince. And the former deputy head of intelligence, who apparently sent the team to Istanbul and was then fired, was also apparently close to the Crown Prince. Isn't that quite damning for the Crown Prince?
Look, this is a huge tragedy, and we're making sure that it doesn't happen again, and we want to make sure that those who are involved get their due punishment. The CIA report that you talk about, I haven't seen it, so I can't assess it. The CIA report that has been talked about in the media, we've heard different versions of it. What I do know is that the spokesperson for the State Department said that the reporting on the CIA report is inaccurate, and what we've heard is the President say that the CIA report is not what people say it is. And so we have to go by this. If you have any evidence, or any government has any evidence that it would like to make available to the Saudi courts, I am sure the courts will be pleased to receive it.
There are rumours that the Crown Prince could be replaced because he's become a liability for the Saudi government. Does the Crown Prince still have the confidence of King Salman?
The Crown Prince has the confidence of every Saudi citizen, including King Salman. The Crown Prince is the architect and driving force between the reform program in Saudi Arabia and Vision 2030, between turning Saudi Arabia into a modern country in which normal people can lead normal lives. He's the architect on restoring the true Islam to Saudi Arabia, an Islam of moderation and tolerance, in which women are empowered and youth are empowered, where there's a focus on excellence and achievement, and serious work against extremism that has been a plague in many countries. And he's the architect of our economic diversification program, attracting foreign investment, opening up new areas for investment, expanding Saudi investments abroad. So he has the support, as I said, of every Saudi citizen.
I mean, wouldn't the best way for Saudi Arabia to clear the Crown Prince's name be to have an international investigation, to allow outside investigators to question the Crown Prince, to question Saudi officials, and to question the men who have now been indicted?
We have a public prosecution office that is capable of conducting investigations, and we have a legal system that is capable of adjudicating these cases. So the idea of an international investigation is completely unacceptable to Saudi Arabia. Would any other government allow an international investigation? Did the United States allow an international investigation into Abu Ghraib? Did other countries allow investigations when other issues happened? Of course not. We are a sovereign country. We want to make sure that this doesn't happen again. We have come out from day one to say this was not authorized, and we have added or told the story based on the information we have, and as the information we obtained becomes more complete, we came out and said, no, what we said first was not accurate. Here's what actually happened.
But there was initially a cover-up, at least by some Saudi officials, and that has shaken people's confidence in the Saudi government, hasn't it?
The individuals who conducted this operation came back and gave a report that turned out to be false. And then the king ordered an investigating team to go to Turkey and work with our Turkish friends. In doing their work there, it turned out that the information that the individuals provided was not correct. So His Majesty directed that an investigation be launched in Saudi Arabia. The public prosecutor began that investigation and was able to establish that a killing did take place. And so we came out and announced it. And then as the investigation proceeded and it became more clear how the killing was conducted and who the people responsible were, the public prosecutor came out to the press and said, here's the story that we have been able to put together, and here are the steps that we'll be taking against 11 of the 18 individuals.
I mean, from the outside, it looks as if Saudi Arabia's story has just kept on changing from week to week. First a denial, then the suggestion that Jamal Khashoggi died in a fist fight, and then most recently that he was killed by a lethal injection.
It was based on the information that we were able to obtain and the testimony or the confessions of the people in detention. And when the public prosecutor was able to put the pieces together, a clearer picture emerged that was different from the picture that we thought was clear in the beginning. This is not unusual when you have crimes that the facts or the storyline can change. If you look at the Oklahoma City bombing, initially people blamed, I believe, a Palestinian American for the crime, and they even talked about how he escaped. And then it turns out it was Timothy McVeigh. Does this mean that Oklahoma police and the FBI were covering up? It just means that as more of the facts were obtained, the story becomes more clear, and then that's what our prosecution office shared with the world.
As a result of this crisis, is Saudi Arabia going to change what it's doing in Yemen, where Saudi Arabia is accused of targeting civilians with airstrikes and of exacerbating a deadly famine?
We have, our policy is the same in terms of domestic policies, our foreign policy is the same, our security policy is the same. In Yemen, we are there to protect Yemen from takeover by a radical militia allied with Iran and Hezbollah that has hijacked the country, that uses child soldiers, boys 9, 10, 11 years old, puts them in the battlefield, that uses starvation as an instrument of policy by laying siege on towns and villages and preventing aid from coming in, by robbing humanitarian assistance and selling it to fund its war machine, by launching ballistic missiles indiscriminately at towns and cities, including more than 200 missiles at Saudi Arabia. We're trying to move Yemen towards a peaceful situation. We're trying to move Yemen towards a political settlement based on UN Resolution 2216 and the outcomes of the National Dialogue of Yemen and the GCC initiative. And we are working very closely with the UN envoy in order to achieve that.
So no change?
The policy in Yemen, our policy in Yemen has always been designed to minimize casualties and to maximize humanitarian support. No country in the world has provided more aid to Yemen than Saudi Arabia. The amount of aid has exceeded $13 billion since the conflict began. 2 days ago, we announced another $500 million to provide, to alleviate food shortages in Yemen. We are committed to providing more assistance to Yemen, and we're committed to rebuilding Yemen when the war is over.
I mean, just over 2 years from now, the US, just over 2 years from now, there could be a Democrat in the Oval Office. Both houses of Congress could be controlled by the Democrats. And then the US government might take a much greater interest in finding out who gave the order, ultimately, to kill Jamal Khashoggi. Is that worrying for the Saudi government?
We deal with U.S. governments as U.S. governments and U.S. presidents as U.S. presidents, whether Democrat or Republican. Our relationship is bipartisan. It began with a historic meeting between the late King Abdulaziz and the late Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who was a Democrat, and it continued and grew stronger and deeper and broader with every passing decade, irrespective of who is in the White House. And I believe that America appreciates Saudi Arabia's central role in the Arab world and the Islamic world, appreciates Saudi Arabia's central role in the financial markets and in the energy markets. I believe America appreciates Saudi Arabia's central role in fighting extremism and terrorism. And I believe America appreciates Saudi Arabia's partnership in solving the challenges of our region, if not the world. And every American president has understood this since the late FDR.
So you're confident that Saudi Arabia's alliance with the US is safe, despite the killing of Jamal Khashoggi?
God willing, yes, because we as a government had nothing to do with it. This was a rogue operation. We came out and said it. We identified the individuals involved. We have, the public prosecutor had filed charges against them, and 5 of them will be facing a death sentence.
So thank you very much.
You're welcome.